In the following chapter, you'll actually see me start photographing Mikkel actually in the reflection of a mirror, which is a glorified sign for a sunglass company called Elesteva. And it's interesting because I couldn't stop and teach towards the camera. So, like I normally would, I'd look to another camera and teach and talk about what I'm thinking, why I'm thinking it. But it was done in a spare of the moment, and I couldn't slow down, and I was actually worried about being kicked out. And it couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, we were embraced by the manager of the sunglass company, Lestova, and they were so gracious, so fantastic. So, what I wanted to do is just tell you that in the following chapter, you'll watch me photographing Mikhail just sort of squatting down on the reflection of a sign, which was really cool. And then what happened, I thought, you know what, I don't want to push it too far, but wouldn't it be cool to go in and ask for some sunglasses and maybe just get permission to photograph in the store? And a series of events unfolded that actually were super cool. So, yes, after that particular scene, I walked in, hey, I love your stuff. Can I photograph in the store? Then we talked about even borrowing sunglasses, which they gave us. And then shortly thereafter, they sort of said, hey, I'm not supposed to tell you this probably, but there's a little stairwell in the backyard area that is really rustic and cool, and I think you'd love it. And it was fantastic. So it was a typical Soho, New York experience. And when I say that, if you've been to New York many times, you'll sort of know what I mean. I mean, they call it the Big Apple. They call it like anything that can happen in New York will often happen. And it was just really, really fun. I really enjoyed my time there. But the problem was and is that I didn't get a chance to speak into the camera and what I was doing creatively. So what I want to basically do right now is walk through the images with you, and then you'll see them being created as well. So let's do that. So this is one of the images of my favorites in that particular scene. And as you can see there, I think it's actually really clever. You know, objects in the mirror are even more spectacular than they appear. I thought that's just really cool. I cropped all that stuff out so you can sort of see there's a little bit of negative space all around, but I got her to squat down. And because when I cropped wider, which you'll see, there was just a bit too much information, and I often say crop context to improve mystery. So I'm cropping a bit of the context of where she's standing and sitting and squatting, so that I can focus on the cool messaging and just clever advertising from the company Lestova. So that's that, and these are the shots that you'll see me take in the following chapter or two, where I just get her to squat down. Now this was photographed at 85mm f1.2, and you can just see that the plane of focus is on her eyes, which is beautiful. That little gesture of the hand is really nice, and then everything drifts off that in focus. I think every photographer, or whether you're a hobbyist, whether you're a pro, you have to have at least one fast prime lens. It's because you can make any bad location look really good because everything's out of focus, it drifts out, and it's really dreamy, and it's got a beautiful effect. You can sort of see how, like, she's pretty much censored. There's probably a touch more negative space here and here, mainly because of her hand. The next photograph, you'll see, obviously she's peering off, so I'm allowing a bit of negative space for her gaze to breathe a little bit, hence me cropping that a little bit differently. Then this one is a little bit more mysterious. Her face is a touch biased that way, so the negative space is behind her. I allow some breathing space above her brow. I never normally want to cut just underneath the hairline, guy or girl, because it makes you feel like that person is prematurely losing hair or receding the hairline, or their head just looks big. In this case, I just allow breathing space above the brow, and I make sure that the ear is actually in, and we've just got, the tip of the lenses, or the frame part of me is in focus, and then everything is out. And I just love that. And this is just a little bit of a wider shot in that particular environment, so you can sort of give you an idea of the kinds of crops that I'm sort of doing. This one was in the sunglass store. So after we sort of developed a relationship with the manager there and built up some trust, we used the ice light, as you'll see in the chapter of where we're making this image. And obviously it's a mirror to clean reflection, and we're using a combination of sort of ambient light along with the ice light. This one, I don't really know why this came to me. I just thought it'd be pretty cool to do. I think my creative trigger was that the sunglasses were very small, and I'm like, well, how do I make it more abundant? And then well, it almost looks like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a bit weird that she's got one nail longer than the other, but I sort of quite like the anomaly. I think it's pretty cool. Sometimes, those are the things you talk about, although it's a sort of a glorified mistake, whether it's just the fact that she didn't file her nails down. We didn't ask for a specific kind of manicure, which I normally do, so that kind of stuff is important. Then these series of images I absolutely love. So she's obviously in the window. So she's almost like a mannequin, but a live mannequin. And, this was using some of her own prowess, her own movements, and then myself sort of getting involved and her mirroring my gestures. So when I pose people, I just get them to mirror me and move around accordingly. And I find that's just an easy way to pose someone, one, period, let alone if they can't hear you or if they can't understand the English language or the language that you speak. So mirroring is the easiest way you can pose someone. So I love these poses. Just even the simple shot like that looks really, really cool. And I am in love with these shots. So if you've seen this chapter first, you'll watch the making of this. But this is actually me a little bit on the edge. Actually, let me just show you here. I can probably show you a little bit of that window. So if you sort of look beyond this store, there's a sort of a little area there. And I stood on that little platform and shot through the glass. The cool thing is that I'm actually getting a reflection of everything sort of like in that direct path of the glass. The cool thing is that people were walking past with black jackets, light T-shirts, you name it. Cars were driving by of different colors and tones and densities. So what happens is you've sort of got this merging of colors that come through, and sometimes the image is very rich, sometimes it's actually very, very pale and faint. What I like about this, I deliberately shot with f1.2. Sometimes, obviously, there's only a sliver of amount in focus. But the cool thing is that every so often the focus drifts from her eyes to the sunglasses. This is a bit of foliage on a plant in the foreground that's actually before the glass starts. And we just get a series of gestures. So if you look at this area, do you see clearly that someone is walking past with a black jacket? It could be, or a car. And then you keep on going. See how, again, that exact reflection, that angle, it gives us something to sort of play with. But I love the fact that we can move in and out of these. So watch what happens when I do this. So you clearly see that people are walking past in a sort of a different area. Why did I do this shot? I don't know. I just, I guess I do know. I was photographing, Mikkel in a way that, looked like Morpheus, because she has this Morpheus vibe from the movie Matrix, like with her jacket and everything, even the way I posed her and everything like that. And the back of her head's got just an incredible, she's got little shaved parts that just form a bit of a shape. And then I'm like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to just put the sunglasses on the back of her head and then just use the manhole cover there to the basement as the background? And, it's a bit weird, but it looks pretty cool. This one was using a Profoto A10 with a modifier, click softbox, and I deliberately shot with tungsten white balance. So it sort of cleans up I think it was tungsten white balance, but then with the flash. So I sort of correct some of the color, but all the daylight just turns into blue, which I thought was really cool. And I think for memory, that was just normal color. Okay, normal white balance. And this one was with the sepia picture control, which I thought was really, really cool. And when you have those earthy tones in the sepia picture control, it just grabs hold of them and just looks incredible. And you can sort of see how I'm using, obviously, the lines of the staircase and everything like that. And one thing I haven't really discussed is this is exactly that position that I was telling you about, where I walked out, and the manager of the store there invited me out and said, hey, I think you'd love this. Probably not supposed to let you do this, but here you go. And these were those shots. So coming down the stairwell, shooting through, and then I'm like, this is just crazy. Like looking up, you have to actually get the model, in this case, Mikkel, leaning forward to correct my perspective because I'm shooting very high up. And then, of course, I needed some flash because she would basically be silhouetted at this point if I wanted the detail in that background. So a couple of shots there, obviously some sunglasses that we had access to. You've got a reflection of the catch light of the softbox on there as well. Then I got rid of the actual catch lights in case I regretted it. You can see that she's sort of making a nice sort of S-curve shape on her body. Don't want her to look too pretty. When I say pretty as in too refined, because she's got a very cool look. It's sort of raw, so the traditional rules don't really matter as much. And then here, my first instinct was to use an ice light or even flash, but a tickle of light is all we needed. And then, of course, when you shoot with f1.2, everything sort of drifts out in the background. And you'll see me creating this shot, but I just love the fact that we've got this gorgeous tickle of light here, 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 and on her leg. And then I'm like, well, man, I mean, we're in this alleyway. It's a perfect opportunity to bring out the Ice Light 3 on the RGB mode, and both red. So I use tungsten. Of course, tungsten white balance is not going to completely correct red. It's more yellow, of course, but it will turn that daylight that is visible into blue. Therefore, it gives us more of a contrast between the warm tones and the cool tones. So don't forget, now, obviously I shot raw and I can do all this afterwards, but I don't think I would think like that in post-production. The idea is that, I'm seeing it the way I see it, and if I can do something in my camera that will like pretty much get to closer to the final result, then why wouldn't I? And I'm creating a beautiful S in there, and there's obviously like a nice sweeping motion to that shot. I've sort of shot her broadly. I'm shooting on the broad side of the face, means the light side of the face. Then I just allowed, maybe rather than the light hit her lower part of her body, let's actually bring it down this way, and then maybe sort of vertical for a bit of fun. And yeah, and that was it. But that was all serendipitous. I didn't plan for it. I literally was just going to walk down the street and shoot where I find. But I tend to be a magnet for these kinds of things. And some people say, well, it's maybe your welcoming Australian accent. And it probably is. I don't know. You just use what you got and you build trust. And hopefully a happenstance like this could happen. And you milk it. So again, please forgive that the following scene or two is not much teaching involved. Hopefully we gave you some extra value there, that we looked at the images together, and then you'll see more of them done. These are just a handful of my favorites, but it sort of gives you an idea of what I was doing and how we ended up going into this place and getting permission. So I hope you enjoyed that, and be sure to check out the rest of the chapters, because there's some really cool stuff coming up.